That breaking news word of a terrifying scare at 30,000 feet. A pilot had a kind of deranged breakdown. On a JetBlue flight headed from New York to Las Vegas, the pilot started screaming about bombs, Al-Qaeda, and telling passengers to say their prayers. And what happened next was an all-American story of courage and quick thinking. Here's ABC's national affairs correspondent Jim Avila.
A chaotic scene aboard JetBlue Flight 191, 3 hours into a trip from New York to Las Vegas. Passengers in the aisle, holding down not an unruly passenger, but the captain of the plane. In the cockpit, his co-pilot radioing an emergency, asking for an unscheduled immediate landing in Amarillo, Texas.
Amarillo, JetBlue 191, emergency.
John, can you give me a more specific nature of this medical emergency so I can pass it on to the ambulance crew?
Sources tell ABC News the captain, identified as Clayton Osborne of Georgia, was not at the controls, but began acting erratically, flipping switches in the cockpit and appearing confused. His co-pilot tricked him into going to the passenger compartment to check something out, and then locked the door, changing the security code behind him.
The one that should have all the credit is the co-pilot that was there. He changed the code on the door. He didn't let him back in.
A third JetBlue pilot, off duty and riding as a passenger, slipped into the cockpit to help with the controls. The captain pacing the aisles now, eventually pounding on the cockpit door, trying to return to the flight deck, starting a panic among passengers.
Started banging on the door, kicking on the door, trying to get inside the cockpit. Before that, he actually started yelling, it's going to blow up.
A flight attendant screamed for help, and as many as 5 passengers helped tackle the now shouting captain. Some saw him foaming at the mouth while yelling about Al-Qaeda, a bomb, and threatening the plane is going down.
He started to curse at me and trying to tell me, hey, you better pray, Iraq and Iran. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to show you what Iraq and Iran is. And I took him on a chokehold.
Dave Gonzalez, a former corrections officer from New York, brought him down with a chokehold.
I wasn't letting go of this guy until we landed the plane. I was still on top of this guy until we landed the plane.
Gonzalez and his fellow passengers held him down, first using plastic handcuffs, but he broke free of those, so passengers used their leather belts to tie his arms, all in plain view of cell phone camera rolling passengers.
We don't need pictures on this, please.
Upon landing, police boarded, talked to the co-pilot, and loaded the handcuffed captain onto a wheelchair and into an ambulance. It's not the first time airline crews have alarmed passengers. Just this month, an American Airlines flight attendant who said she was bipolar was restrained after threatening impending doom over the PA. The plane returned to the gate. Captain Osmond's Facebook page says he has been a JetBlue pilot and trainer since the year 2000, a commercial pilot since 1989. The FAA says he had an onboard medical emergency. The FBI is investigating the incident, and law enforcement sources say early indications are the experienced pilot had a panic attack. His wife, reached by ABC News, says she has not spoken to him but urges patience and asks everyone to remember there are 2 sides of the story. Diane?
All right, Jim Avila, still thinking of the using of the belts by those passengers to restrain him. I want to bring in ABC's aviation analyst, John Nance, who's also a veteran commercial airline pilot. So, John, what do you think of the quick thinking of this co-pilot?
It's something we want a co-pilot to do, and in this case, he acted very decisively, and it shows a tremendous amount of confidence that his company is going to stand behind him, and that's excellent.
And tell me about this screening, because we think back to the flight attendant, now the pilot. What kind of psychological screening is there, and does it work?
Diane, we have a lot of screening that goes on when anybody is hired, especially as a pilot, and it's very good until somebody is on the line for about a year and comes off probation. But then there's kind of a neural network in which everybody is, in effect, watching everybody else, not in a "I'm suspicious of you" form, but in terms of just knowing what's going on. That's one of the most effective methods, but maybe we need to look at ratcheting that up just a bit.
But that's still the best line of defense. I keep remembering that some pilots are trained to carry guns in the cockpit. Does that give you second thought
That's
about
right.
this?
No, not at all. And I'll tell you why. Not only do they go through yet another series of screenings, but there's also a lethal weapon in the cockpit. It's called a fire axe, and it's there for either pilot. So really, a presence or absence of a gun is not a material thing.
Well, we will be learning a lot more about this in the days to come. Two sides to every story, his wife said. Thank you,
Absolutely.
John Nance, for weighing in tonight.